Hello and welcome to another Not Chilly podcast. Here we are, season 3, finally. Oh my god. I am sorry that it has been a while since I've come out. I've got a bunch of new people on here, which is fantastic. One of the most exciting things about this season is that there's going to be new voices in this, which is a much needed thing. Not just hearing my voice, but just different perspectives from different people. And I want to keep trying to introduce as many people as I can. As many people will be willing to sit in front of a microphone and tolerate my being all over the place time-wise. But this should be an interesting season because of that. You're going to hear some perspectives that you hadn't heard before, and something that I've been kind of boasting about doing for a while. And I finally got a chance to, and I'm still in the process of recording more episodes. I'm going to go on a slower cycle. I feel like every 2 weeks I'm going to upload, just because I've got a bunch of things going on. But I preemptively recorded some other episodes. The whole series about Star Wars is also coming, which is exciting. That's going to be with our friend Tony, who you will meet at some point very soon. I'm not sure exactly when the schedule will come out. An episode that's coming really soon is Molly. It's a direct friend that I work with. So that's going to be also exciting. Obviously, Josh is back in the mix. If something from last season is Ian is also going to be on the mix. Stu is also going to be on the mix. So just a whole different pile of voices. But to start us off, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite films of all time. It's got to be a Pixar film. And it's also talking about mental health and talking about the mind and the way it portrays it. It's just, man, it just makes me so happy. And the film is, if you haven't already guessed, is Inside Out. So sit back or keep driving safely and get ready for Josh and I having a big chat. Thanks.
That's a really nice t-shirt. That's new.
No, I've had it for like a decade.
Really?
Yeah. I wear it really infrequently.
How the hell do you keep t-shirts in such nice condition?
I don't wear them often. Probably, I don't know. It's magic. I do have quite a lot of t-shirts that I haven't changed, and this is probably not a decade. I'm trying to remember if I got this.
Did you get it before or after 2009?
Yeah, right?
You know, people doing that thing at the moment. Have you seen it? The Facebook profile.
Yeah.
And they're going from your first profile to, and it's kind of become a 2009 to 2019 thing. And I'm like, my first profile picture was in 2007.
Yeah, that's right. Because we actually had Facebook because we're old enough.
That's it.
We're old enough.
No, we were young enough. Don't think we're old enough. We were young enough to be there when it started in Australia.
Yeah. Oh, when did it start in the States?
2004/5. That's when he originally came up with the idea and they started developing it. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, season 3.
Woohoo!
We're doing it.
Outside In.
Yeah, that's the movie. Oh my god, season 3. So this is crazy.
I apologize for any grossness if any makes it through the edit, because I currently am feeling...
Are you actually apologizing to the audience or to me?
Yeah. I don't care.
You're disgusting. And I'm going to have to cut that and me saying that you're disgusting, because I can only be perceived as a very nice person.
That's true.
So welcome.
Thank you.
You're going to be the first episode.
Wow.
You have the privilege of being... That's why...
Is that going to be this episode?
It's going to be this episode. This is going to be the first episode of season 3 of the Not Chilly podcast. How do you feel?
Confused. Didn't we record something just before the break and it didn't go up?
It was MASH. It was another episode of MASH or South Park.
Oh, and it went up?
No. So we did one of MASH. I got one extra one, which I might throw in.
Oh, in the cupboard.
Yeah. So it will be a 2018 podcast somewhere in the midst of this. If I get once I start the train, then if I get caught in any way, I might throw that in. I don't like the idea of just constantly unlimited content. I think it's I'm a rewatcher. Whenever I watch movies, I usually find the 10 or 20 films I really love, and then I just cycle them through my life, and then occasionally throw in a new one. And so I don't understand, not that I don't understand, I completely get why YouTube in particular is like that, but part of me thinks it's a really destructive style of
it's called burnout.
Yeah, on everyone.
It's I was reading an article about a while ago where it was, talking about YouTube burnout. It was quite interesting. And today it was like Philip DeFranco show. They sort of had like a behind the scenes channel for the last 2.5 years. Or
Yep. Or they're on and off that, but it's quite regular. Yeah.
Oh, so like they ended it today, and they ended their podcast, and it was just so interesting to come back in. Like, I haven't watched him on a regular basis for, I don't know, since probably 2012 or 13 or something.
That's different.
And so coming back to it was like, what the fuck is this show? What is happening? But the alert came up, right? Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I've since unbelled him because I'm just like...
Do you mean his main show or the behind the scenes?
Just all of it.
Okay, yeah. I still watch his main show.
It was just interesting to read the contents. Also, comments like, God, there's just...
Oh, I didn't read those.
I've scum and villainy. It's
right.
such a, like, YouTube comments are just the fucking worst.
Yeah, I don't...
But it was like, I'm not watching your thing anymore because, like, yeah, news is great, but this was way more like, entertaining content. It's like, they want to focus on making news as a news platform. So... That's what they want to do. Like, there isn't a fun... There is, like, after every episode of the news on ABC, there isn't, like, a fun bit where we see behind the scenes.
People falling over down flights of stairs onto cushions.
It was just, like... It's just interesting to see how that happens. But, his style of editing annoys me now. I think that's the main thing.
Okay.
But overall, like, oh my God, what an incredible, like, business story it is.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. It's incredible what he's achieved. I just feel like I'm starting to get that feeling in my life where it's kind of like, like a teenager will be on like some new platform that you haven't heard of before. What, you mean you're not on Squinky? Come on, man, we're all on Squinky. It's like, we used to be on Squinky before everyone else.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But now I feel like I'm not on Squinky, and the thing that I found quite funny is I don't fucking care.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, this is great, all these developments. Good for you, Philip DeFranco. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't affect me, so I'll stay a subscriber. I just unbelled him, that's all.
I never really belled. I don't bell anyone.
Oh, man, I've got a bunch of stuff belled, but my number one bell is props out to Digital Foundry.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
For those, once again, the 10 people listening, hopefully this year I can get like...
If you're interested in technology or video games, Digital Foundry. Those guys, their content is amazing.
Digital Foundry at youtube.com.
I think probably youtube.com/Digital Foundry. But anyway, so that brings us, of course,
to Inside Out. To computers, that's right.
Animation.
Yep. And an amazing film. This is one that I like. This is something we're going to do anyway. We're going to go through the Pixar films.
Oh, are we?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I watched Toy Story 2 the other day.
That doesn't matter. We'll watch it towards the end so that you feel refreshed. I watched Star Wars the other day, and we're about to do that. That's what's happening this season.
How would you do that?
I just really wanted to watch the
episode 8.
Yeah, the Last Jedi again. No, I didn't watch all of Star Wars. No. Because as a quick shout out to this season, this has also hopefully got me to push to actually do it. Pixar, Star Wars is going to happen this season, and just more people. I've got other people lined up.
I'd really love to hear that.
And do you mean hear more people?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know you were a listener. Because then again, you really said that you hate your own voice.
Oh no, I listen to all the episodes.
Oh really?
But it's like, I know what I said.
Yeah, exactly. So it's no surprise. It's just noise.
Well, sometimes. What the fuck did I say?
What did he make me say? How did he cut those?
Yeah.
No, I will say from first
beautiful
episode.
Geniuses.
Yeah. That from the first episode, the R and difficult cutting is changed dramatically. It's
I wholeheartedly agree with this approach.
Oh, I always do that, but it's not as much of a. It doesn't happen as often anymore because we're just a lot more.
We're just such pros.
Oh yeah, 24 episodes is not a small amount when you think about it. That's actually quite a lot of content.
We do speak differently when we're on. Like, if we were sitting having a conversation, we wouldn't be flowing as, at a cafe.
Oh, yeah. We kind of mumble over each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, we just know when to pause, I guess. But I've realized that I'm doing that more in normal conversation, though. I'm listening and then letting people finish their sentences.
Yeah, I think that doing a podcast makes no, I can't say that as a blanket statement. I feel like for me, doing a podcast has made me have to focus a lot more on listening skills, and I think that makes you a better person.
Yeah, no, I will say that
Because it's one of the issues I have with that, and I always feel I'm really bad about, because I like listening to what other people are saying, is because of like my anxiety and OCD, that stream of thoughts can sometimes distract me from what people are saying. So rather than me not caring what people are saying and not being interested, I might go off on a different sort of tangent that's to do with that stuff. Usually in just normal conversation. It's something that's like really important to work on. I was reading a really good article someone posted the other day about like 2019, your film networking year kind of thing. You know, one of those annoying start of the year inspiration articles. But it was stuff I've read a million times before, but it's nice to remind yourself. And it was like, when you go networking, like the number one thing is stop and listen to what other people are saying and really ask them. This is one I find so interesting. Like, I was at a networking event recently, and I was by myself for a while because Georgia was running late, and then, you know, talking to some people, and a lot of yes/no questions happen. And you're just like, where do you go with this? Like, you can't converse with yes/no questions.
no, it's like no.
Yeah. And then I met there was someone really awesome I met who's like a diversity manager at Macquarie University. And it was really interesting to talk about that. And it was, you know, the next 2.5 hours were just talking about diversity. And it was interesting because it just doesn't matter what someone's job is. You're going to, if you just focus on being interested in what the other person does, and everyone has something interesting. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, it doesn't matter what your job is, quite literally. Like, you know, you can be the guy at Bunnings that
Stack shelves.
Cuts the wood for people, like that sort of stuff. Or, you know, or you can be like an executive at a bank or whatever. Like, there is an ocean of information that if you don't do those things, you have no idea about.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just it was just an article saying like it's really important to just ask people essentially like complicated questions that they have to talk for a long time about. And they're like, that makes people remember you and stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, it also just is like being nice.
Like, not the nice part in particular, but the idea of like in recent years, because not in a similar way that you have anxiety, but in a different way that I have anxiety, like kind of social anxiety. One of my things that happens to me is when I'm in an uncomfortable situation or with a larger group of people, I'll just chatterbox, which is a very common thing. And I just won't stop talking. Then I feel really guilty about doing that, and then I start not wanting.
I get that as well, 100%. That's very common with general anxiety.
And then I learned like I didn't really notice this until like Laura was saying to me like, hey, you know, this is the kind of thing that you do, and it was coming from me being really wired. And then I learned over time that it's so much more interesting to listen. Oh, then you got so much more to like. It's just more interesting. Like, life's more interesting when you're not just blabbing all the time, which is funny coming from me, because most people who know me, you know that I talk like a machine compared to.
It's a very common anxiety thing, because you just like, because it's kind of, I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's an assertion of control, maybe, like not in a nasty, you know, controlling way. But it's like, as long as I'm talking, I know that like I can understand the situation.
Yeah, I get what you mean, yeah.
And once the other person starts talking, you're not focusing on what you're saying anymore, and therefore you can think and your thoughts can wander and the anxieties can come. So I think it's like an avoidance thing. But as we all know, like, avoidance is one of the worst ways to manage with anxiety or anything like that. That just makes the ball get bigger and the snowball happen. So it's like, it's better to just acknowledge it in the moment, as you would with, you know, with CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy. You'll go, oh, this is happening. I now must do something about it. And the doing something about it is, I'm going to focus as hard as possible on what this person is saying.
Yes.
And ignore all the other stuff, because that's anxiety. Rather than going, I'm going to talk as much as possible to fill the space of time, because if that's happening, then I'm not going to be thinking.
Yeah, that's right. And I often don't remember what I say. And I also find that I get really uncomfortable with other people. Like, if there's like a group of people and one or two of them aren't talking, one of them try to talk, I get really unsettled.
Yep.
And so like it's part of the reason why I talk so much, because I want to bring people in, and I'd start doing things that make other people feel uncomfortable.
Some people just don't talk much.
Yeah, that's right.
It also depends on the situation. Like if I go to something and everyone's talking about like football or something, I'll go.
Sorry, football fans, but I'm not a football fan. It sucks because I feel like there's football, surfing, and music concerts and stuff like that. It's
Music. I'll ask questions. Like I said, anything can be interesting. If people start talking about their teams, I'll make it very clear that I have no fucking idea what anyone is talking about, but I'll ask about their teams because like it is interesting.
Yeah.
It's just I don't care in that it's a part of my life. Like I don't.
Yeah, I won't go suddenly sponsor or like jump on and like look at it.
But I care in that like I would happily go to a game of literally any sport except golf.
I would probably do any sport once, even golf.
Cricket. I don't want to go to cricket.
I don't.
Basically asking for sunburn. Sit in the sun and watch people hit something.
Hit a hard rock, with a stick
every fucking 40 minutes.
It's like baseball. It's just something about like I'm gonna get this rock. This thing can like kill people and break skulls, and I'm gonna throw it at you as hard as possible. And then you're gonna have to stand in front of these wicket things and hit with this small sized bat that is.
Baseball is boring, but so much more interesting than cricket.
That's saying something about cricket. Sorry, cricket fans. Once again, like there's another.
Sorry.
Yeah, I got a few people that.
Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, Matt. Matt's into cricket.
Really?
But he also finds it funny when I talk about cricket because I'm just so cynical about cricket. But yeah, anyway. So this is actually a really good breacher. We talked about computers. We talked about mental health. Now let's talk about Inside Out, which is kind of... It isn't a film about mental health directly.
Yeah, I think it's... You know what's funny? My initial... Watching it... That's the second time I watched it. Mm-hmm. And I came away the first time remembering there being an emphasis on, like, depression.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't...
No, she never actually gets...
she's not depressed. She's just... she starts to get depressed.
Yes, yeah.
But I think that it was that... And that's actually a far smaller portion of the film than what I remember it being. But
it's almost like she's becoming depressed, but she never gets there. But
it just expressed it in a way that anyone who's had depression, well, at least for me anyway, it was the most like succinct demonstration of what it feels like. It's the only thing I've ever seen that like visually, in terms of audio, in terms of it's the only real almost metaphor. You know, it's the only thing that I've ever seen that is, if someone said to me, like, I don't really understand depression, which is conversations I've had before, and you try to explain what it's like and they don't, so you're just really sad? Is that what it is? It's No. It's like, imagine having a very strange type of brain damage, like, that numbs you and makes you apathetic and makes you disinterested and robs you of a lot of, like, capacity to enjoy things.
Yeah, that's right.
It's it's not that you're not sad. You can be cheered out of sadness. Sadness is fleeting and temporary. Depression is a very, very, very different concept. So for some reason I remembered her getting depressed, but she doesn't. And but there are symbols in it, like the islands and things like that. Oh yeah,
that's perfect.
And that's true. I think that if you've ever had long-term depression, I do think that you come out of that with your islands either severely damaged or some of them are gone and they don't come back. Because when you do get long-term depression, it's like your frontal lobe might shrink. Your brain restructures when you're depressed on a physical level. And so that, I think, was a very clever way of demonstrating those things, and then at the same time, like, balancing the ideas of childhood expression of emotion and sort of bumping up and down. And it's an incredibly ambitious film because it's trying to tackle really complicated things in a way that needs to be simplified without oversimplifying it to the point that they trivialize it. So they never make anything feel trivial. It all has its weight and its importance, and you never feel like they're skipping over stuff. And yet they do everything with visual and audio and character and stuff in a way that's so efficient.
Oh yeah,
it's interesting because it's one of those films that, although Pixar's sort of had a rocky 5 or so years, you you kind of always reach a point where you go, oh, they'll never get better than Toy Story 3, or what can they do better than this, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you watch something like Inside Out and you just go, fuck, they just
Smashed it.
Yeah, it was. I think it's one of the best films that they've made because of that. It's just a multi-layered approach to something that is very complicated. It takes a lot of effort to make. I'm trying to think of like when you watch a figure skater do what they do, it looks easy. Or you watch like Steph Curry do a 3-point shot, it looks easy. But it's because of the massive amount of work and complexity of systems that have gone into what they're doing and the knowledge and all that stuff. Inside Out works in such a smooth way and addresses such complicated things because they've gotten that good at doing their jobs.
Well, that's actually an interesting point to make because I watched all the behind the scenes and stuff like that. One of the things I mentioned was that I can't remember exactly the turnaround, but I feel like they had 4 years from the beginning and they like completely restructured. They had that idea of like, the mind of a little girl, and that was it. And they supposedly I think like a few years or a year or so in, they changed writers, they completely restructured everything and just started from scratch with that same core concept. And then that's when it kind of picked off. And it was really fascinating to see how much failure existed in that, and it was causing a lot of stress for the director, because it's quite a serious kind of it's a pretty big title, and it's so, even the iterations of all the characters, and I remember watching a bit about just talking about who would be with Joy on her trip, because they first were like, well, she's going to be by herself on this journey. It's like, well, then there's going to be a boring movie. I mean, they say that, but then WALL-E was an amazing film. But then they're like, okay, who do we throw in? And then you see some of the combinations and you're like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine the film with just what's it called, the imaginary character, just him.
Oh, Bobo.
Yeah.
Boing boing
boing or something. Yeah. And it's like one of the versions of that was just her and boing boing, and there was also just basically all of the characters they kind of threw into that thing until they got to the point where they're like, no, it was the last decision they made, which was the sadness, which seems so it makes, like you said, seems so effortless and so, it makes so much sense. But then in reality, it was a lot of trial and error to get to that point.
Yeah, I think it's it's like when they did those scans, X-rays and stuff on the Mona Lisa. It's like it's like 20 different versions of her facial expression on that painting, and it's not about finding the right thing, it's about eliminating the wrongs. And that's why I wrote about in a blog sometime last year, where it's just the huge importance of failing in creative work. And that's the thing, they would have just failed and failed and failed and failed, and it's frustrating, but then you end up with the film that they had. And if they hadn't gone through the process of failing continuously on different ideas, it would be a different, very likely nowhere near as good film.
My best, not that I do any level of drawing that they do, but my best versions of any of my drawings have always been through I've done a sketch and then I've drawn over the sketch and I've drawn over the sketch and then I've drawn over the sketch, and then suddenly I really understand it. I'm like, oh man, those have been, technically speaking, those have been the best drawings that I've done. And I keep telling myself, you got to keep doing this. You got to do the sketch first. And then I don't. I get lazy and then I just do the first.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest part about script writing, is that you do all this work, you get something out, and then it's on paper or on the computer or whatever. And then you sit there and you go, cool, now I have to start again. And keep doing this until it's workable. And then, they'll redo it again when they shoot it. They'll redo it again when they edit it.
Yeah.
And it's just a thing of making something that looks effortless. It doesn't matter what it is. Always has a huge amount of work behind it. And you just see in that film sort of so many different ideas of how do you express this? How do you express that? They come up with all of these really simple ways of showing stuff. When she sort of starts getting into that place where it really is depressed, it's like the emotion control panel starts turning black, and they need to reconnect.
And they can't control it. They're trying to, the emotions are trying to control it.
They're being shut down.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't care anymore. And it's that thing of, that would be a whole discussion. Is how do you show that? What is the device that we use to demonstrate that? And how do we take as best a Star Wars approach to this as possible, wherein, no one's sitting there going, and this is how the Millennium Falcon works. And
exposition-y.
Yeah. It's that thing of how do we make it feel like all of this stuff will work, and how do we express it? And the islands was a really clever thing, and they have that nice montage at the start that is the exposition that's like, here's the universe that we're in, let's set this up, and it's all like this. But they do it so efficiently and inoffensively that it's necessary, right? Otherwise that movie would be like, what the fuck is going on? What's an island?
Yeah, that's right. And that's a good point you make, because Amy Poehler makes a point about this film when you say, I forgot the wording that you chose, but she says that one of the things that she really was like, what she really loved about this film in particular, why she wanted to be on board, was that it's one of the few films that doesn't portray a real negative aspect. It's quite a positive film.
It's a really positive film, and it has one of the most beautiful things of... One of the things I like about it is that joy is really interesting, because joy, when you feel down or you feel depressed or you feel any of those things, it's like when you're depressed, you're basically the worst. Like, depressed people are the fucking worst, because you can't cheer them up. You can't... At some point, you just have to hit a level of, I just need to be near them and be supportive, and then that's all. Because I can't do anything. And you can't, even if you get frustrated, you can't be angry or whatever about, can you just fucking stop being this way? Because that's how you feel when someone around you is depressed. It's very frustrating. So one of the things I find really interesting is joy also reminds me of people who have never experienced depression and don't go through that stuff and are just the constantly perky type of personalities. And it's just interesting, I think there's a huge pressure on people to try and deny that there's bad things in life and that people get sad and that they feel negative things. And I think that those things are, not only are they valid, they're important. They're part of what makes life life. The world's a fucking messy place, and our brains are really complicated, and bad things happen, and it's okay to feel down, because I don't really like the expression when people say you don't know what happiness is so much better if you felt really sad, or
the contrast concept.
The whole contrast idea. I don't subscribe to that, but I think that you are a more full person if you are open to experiencing things like sadness, particularly. And that's the thing, is that at the end of the film, right, all of her core memories are, it's not just yellow and blue, it's not just joy and sadness, there's actually anger in there and this and that. It's about accepting what the reality of life is and how constantly evolving it is, and it's a film about accepting that it's okay for life to move forward and for things to change. Joy is trying to hold on to everything all the time because everything's important. When they're vacuuming up all the different memories, it's because they're not important. If they're important, she would have made them a part of her life. She would have kept doing piano.
Yeah, that's right.
And the thing that is interesting about it is it sad that you lose things, people in your life, or places that you used to go to, or things that you do? It's that nostalgia thing, right? If you constantly think of everything as joyous and relevant to you, then I think you run the risk of becoming one of those people who's addicted to nostalgia. Whereas I think there's, I'd love for certain things from my past to be still a reality, but you look at it and go, well, it was good for when we had it, and now it's over, and that's just the way it is. Whatever that might be, right? I think back and I go, wow, school, as it turned out, was actually really comparatively, well, I fucking hated school, right? I had a horrible time at school, but when I think back on it, I wish I could insert my adult mind into that teenager and go, bro, this is easy. This shit is simple. Life is so basic, but that's one of those things, right? That's, you sort of start falling into that thing of, I wish I could go back and all that kind of stuff. But if you paid me $1 billion, I fucking wouldn't go back and do that shit again. Because you don't
It's also all relative as well. Like, you know, in that time, like in this story here, her moving from one part to the world to the other is the biggest deal in her entire life. To the parents, it's obviously they still obviously think, oh no, I miss being home, and I know this is stressful, but they don't react like she does.
Because, like, yeah, living in Minnesota, maybe they've lived in Minnesota, or their memories with her in Minnesota are just a chapter.
Yes.
When you're a child,
that's your life.
It's the entirety, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you're standing next to a 10-year-old and you go, oh, in 2009, this is what I was doing, and they're like, I wasn't born. You know, it's that thing of whatever they've experienced is the entirety of their life, and so therefore change is astronomically
more powerful
concept. But I do think that there are people that also just grow up and don't accept that things change. But I think that that's one of the wonderful things about this film is that it's about letting go of. It's not about letting go. It features the concepts of letting go of things, accepting that you move forward and that things change, and there's a thesis in the film, right? It's presenting an argument. It's saying this is what we think the importance of a full range of emotions is, and of letting go of your past. This is what we think about that. And you could have a counter version of that film, right? Where it's like, fuck you, sadness.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But I think it's a film about being healthy and
emotionally healthy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I think that. But the thing that really connected with me was really that idea of the islands stuff was a huge thing. Because for me, that's something that really resonated with me, was the islands and the things shutting down and changing and all that type of stuff. Where you, I think you go through certain chapters in your life. It's like at the end of the film, she doesn't just have Hockey Island, Family Island, Friend Island, Goofy Island, I think it was.
Yeah.
Goofball Island. She's got like...
Fun Island.
She's got 15, 20 islands by the end. And I think that that's what life really is that if you hold on to something so tight, I think you're more likely to strangle it than you are. And that's Joy. Joy's character in this is strangling everything. If she just let everything... If she hadn't tried to stop sadness all the time, the whole thing...
wouldn't have happened.
The whole thing wouldn't have happened, or it would have played out in a healthier way, is what I think. It still would have happened, but I think she wouldn't have lost her islands, you know. And it's that interesting thing of like just the way it really has that sort of thing as well of how our emotions control us, particularly anger. That's a really, really hard one, anger and fear. And then I think fear sort of falls into frustration and a whole bunch of other things. And I think that it's really interesting. You sort of experience these things where your emotions end up controlling you. And that's another really interesting aspect of the film as well.
Let's take it back to Joy, because it's interesting that you say what you say about Joy, because what I'd like to do is actually go through the characters and the kind of main locations, like where they go and the experience of them, because I think that that's kind of the structure, and that would be the most interesting way of dissecting this. Because for me, Joy is, this film resonated with me in such a strong way, because in the same way that it kind of is portrayed, is that Joy for me is the kind of voice in my head that always says everything's okay, everything's fine, you know, like, and it doesn't let go, it suppresses a lot of the other emotions that exist, because everything has to be fine, everything has to be okay. And in recently my life is that's been part of, you know, like the battle, because when you give one emotion too much emphasis and too much power, then all the other ones end up just shutting down. And that's what happens, you know, like your ability to, you know, like, I mean, they all kind of flare up in their own kind of way, but the joy takes over and it starts to like really become a problem. And I think in the same way that obviously the end of the film describes, is that it is very much a combination. It is very much a mixed thing. There was a really interesting part of the documentary that they were talking about in this, like, you know, the behind the scenes or whatever. He was talking about relationships with people, and he was talking about how the relationships between all like anyone that you're really close with doesn't exist on one version of that spectrum. It doesn't exist in just joy, or doesn't just exist in that. The deeper relationship you have, you experience the range of feelings. And the closer you are with someone, the more someone has been in touch with that range of feelings. And it kind of reminds me of that importance of allowing everything to exist, all those emotions to exist, to get close to people. Because if you're suppressing that, especially with people that you are really close with, then you're not doing yourself or them any service. You're just hindering what I figure one of the most important parts of life, which is, people and experiences. So yeah, anyway, so joy for me is actually like a reminder, very much more literal in this film, the reminder of how easily you can get sucked into that whirlwind of like, everything's fine, it's okay, things were better back then, we can make that work, and ignoring all the parts that are saying, no, you need to experience this, you need to be fearful and anxious at this moment, or you need to listen to that, even if you don't need it to take over, but you need that to be part of your life, because eventually you suppress that to such a point where it needs to yell just to get your attention, and that becomes completely disorienting, which I think is kind of what happened to me to a certain degree. Like, I've suppressed all that to such a degree, and then responsibilities and life started to build up on me, and then suddenly, my anxiety just goes bam out of nowhere, just like completely throttles me. The anxiety was always there, and I can pinpoint it through my life very easily.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So what about sadness? Like, so how does that resonate with you? That character? Because sadness is all about depression. I'm joking. It's like,
I think that's interesting because, like, I don't think I get sad very much. I quite enjoy if I'm like films and things like that take me down that path.
That one does.
I really like that sometimes. Sometimes I'll be flicking through stuff and maybe I'll come to, I don't know, like Good Will Hunting or I don't know, some film, and you go, oh yeah, you know what, I could fucking cry for 20 minutes. That sounds fine. I think that the interesting thing, before I go on about sadness, what you just said, the thing it raised in me was just that idea of a healthy emotion diet is what you're talking about. It's like, if you're gorging on joy all the time, then ignoring the other stuff, then you're gonna have no immunity to sadness. You have to have those things in your emotion diet in order to be able to deal with them when they hit you hard.
Oh yeah.
And I've experienced that during depression. I think I've discussed, in fact, on the podcast, I think I have before, when I was coming out of a lengthy depression and then sort of had a bit of an anxiety moment about something because I was feeling an emotion that was making me feel very uncomfortable. And then I sat and did some
CBT or whatever.
Yeah, and was like, okay, what's going through your mind, all that kind of stuff. And it was happiness.
Oh my God.
I was happy, and that was making me feel very anxious. And because you can't be happy, like, it means that you must have forgotten something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There must be something that you're not remembering, because there's always something wrong.
I get anxious when there's like calmness. When there's silence, or when I'm feeling like,
when's the storm?
yeah, it's like, oh my God, you're not worried about something.
Yeah,
you should be worried about that. I'm like, come on.
And as you like go through like a CBT journey, you get better and better at enjoying that. It's like, say after like I finished a massive project, and then maybe I've only got a few small jobs coming up or something, and you sort of start. It's like, no, for the next 2 or 3 days, I'm going to enjoy the fact that I just did a lot of work and accomplished something, and then I will start focusing and re-energizing about the stuff that matters for the next phase. But it's really important for right now that I enjoy, because if you don't do that, and so that was the thing for me, is like joy was like not existing in my emotion diet. I've often had a fear of sadness, but I think that's because I can get overprotective about that emotion, because I get worried about where it might go, but it's irrational because that's not connected to long-term depression and other issues. So I've over the past, I'd say probably like 3 years, that's actually when I just sort of, I would go through my movie collection, and I like a lot of really dark films, and so I'd just sort of go through and discount, I'd find like 2 out of all my films I could watch, because it's like, but that has that one scene that like really upsets me, so I don't want to watch that, and rather than doing that, instead it was like, no, put it on, let's watch that film and let's go through that. That's part of life. Like shit stuff happens, and it makes you you just can't ignore particularly sadness. I think that because sadness is just, it's inevitable, you're gonna have to feel various levels of sadness at some point, and if you're not familiar with it, sadness, disappointment, all those kind of emotions, then you're not going to handle it very well. A lot of people write stuff about how sort of the younger generations, because it's, you can't fail school anymore, you can barely fail at university, you can all this kind of stuff. It's like when they hit the real world and then failure is constant, that it hits them really hard. And it's kind of like that. It's like, maybe you're up for a really big contract or something, or a client changes a project and they don't want to do something anymore. It's that thing of, you have to, particularly in the type of work that we do, be used to disappointment, because it hits,
and sometimes it's overwhelming as well. Sometimes
it can be 3 things at once.
Yeah, I just told you about having like that weekend, which is now like 3 jobs. I've been completely dead for like a few months, a month or so, and then like 3 jobs booked in on the same weekend. It's like, really, like, guys?
Yeah.
And I recently went through, like, this is you probably get the grunt of this, and so does Laura, and it's like I went through the cycle of like being just feeling just shit about where I am in the industry, knowing full well that this has been one of the quietest years. Like last year, 2018 was one of the quietest years in
and you're going into the quietest season,
and I'm going into the quietest season. Yet I just felt completely,
and it's that thing of bringing back and getting used to, and just having, that's one of the things I've actually gotten quite good at, is disappointment. Because you just got to learn to get punched in the face emotionally if you want to do things like film or documentary or whatever. You're relying on other people looking at the outcomes of what you do, in terms of having return on investment, right? Whether it be like, oh, we want to make sure that this thing has a really good reach and our audiences like it a lot, or literally like, this has to make money.
Yeah.
So when people are looking at that, it's like, it's not unfair for them to go, you know what, I'm not sure about this. And that's something you have to get really used to, because particularly in the industries we work in.
Nice.
That was a T, actually. I'll have you know. I didn't say worked. I said worked.
Okay, sure.
It was a stumble. The industries we work in, it's just going to happen. And so that's one of the things that's really quite difficult. So it's quite funny that I think that's a lot of like the things that resonate from that film, is that having a very deep understanding of this film, and I remember this from the first time I watched it, I felt really adult. I felt like I'd achieved something. Like, if I understand every single time, and I know it's universal, right? I know it's all as broad shotgun approach to these things as possible. But I identified with everything that's happening in it in a way that made me feel I'm on the other side of something. And that something is, when the thing they do very well in the film, and that's really, really, it's such a great gag when she walks up to the guy and says, here's your bottle or whatever, and he freezes up and it's 100 motions in his head, that sort of puking joke, right? The truth of the matter is that at that age, like as a baby earlier in the film, it's like you've only got X number of emotions. Your brain's just not that complicated.
No.
And then when you're a teenager, you go through and your brain start having emotions you haven't felt before. And
hormones.
Exactly, yeah. But the thing is, it's always about learning to wield things. And that's the thing that makes you sort of feel like you've sort of achieved something. It's like you go, I've got those badges.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to
been
say.
through that.
The film, one of the kind of like on that exact idea, one of the things looking at that film, that there's a massive difference between being like, oh, that makes sense, or looking at the film being like, I get it. And I feel like watching this film, and it's that same kind of like badge of honor of emotions, watching the film now in particular, looking at it and being like feeling like it's reflective rather than something new, something that you don't understand. It does feel pretty.
And it makes you feel safe because you've got like the amazing creative people at Pixar legitimizing your current or previous feelings or ongoing feelings, whatever it might be. You've got it up on a big screen saying, hey, this happens.
Yeah.
Like, this is an experience people have. And when they go inside the parents' heads, and it's that sort of, rudimentary, and it's still based on the same systems.
It's slightly
just
different.
more developed, right?
Yeah.
Or unhealthy in the father's case, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I did like about it is that the reference that, as you point out, it's like sadness for the mum is the one who's sitting
The
in the
leader.
center. And it's that thing of that. I like to think that because her sadness is so powerful and wants to touch things and do things all the time, it's like, oh, she got it from her mum. And anger was so overwhelming. It's like who was sitting in the center in the dad's head.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's that thing of, you kind of think that, I think she will go through some depressions in her life, and she'll have some mental health problems and all this kind of stuff. It just sort of seems like there's an interesting depth to how they sort of arrange the characters in the parents' heads that made it interesting.
Well, it showed that like a really simple concept can be completely like unique and complex. The moment you go into someone else's head and you realize it's totally different in some ways, but it's the same idea, the same system, but it's just totally different. Yeah. So tell me more. Tell me about like.
I was going to say, like, if you want to go to the other ones, I am starting to lose my voice now.
Okay. Well, let me talk a bit because I haven't even talked about sadness. I have a similar relationship. I don't often get really sad about things, but I do enjoy that. Like, there's a relief, like I'll intentionally watch a movie like this because I know it'll make me feel sad, and it feels good. And whenever I've ever been sad about something, or I've ever had like kind of an emotional break or something, then I've always come at the other end feeling better. So there is some kind of relief in it. But I was going to ask before we continue, who's your leader? Who do you think is your leader in the emotional? If you could, I mean, obviously it's more complicated and it's not simple, but like, who is the one that's pressing in charge? I'll tell you, mine's Joy straight off the bat, easily.
Yeah, I wouldn't have one. I think it would either be.
You can be a combination.
Oh yeah, it would probably be closer to like sadness and fear, I reckon.
Okay.
I think so. I don't do a lot of things, not out of like I'm scared of doing that, but
It's kind of
risk averse. Yeah, really good tendency for this for the industries we're in. But I do think that I'm continually improving on that. Where I just, whenever I try to do something, I try to bite off more than I can chew by a reasonable margin, so that I can come out the other side and go, oh, I achieved something, instead of staying at the same level all the time.
Well, I mean, I think that's a battle with anything. Like with my own, like being on the more like, which I totally see myself as on the joy capacity, why that film resonates so well with me. But seeing the dysfunction and learning to take a more realistic and to listen to the other sides of my emotion and not to shut things down is something that I have had to actively teach myself. So in the same way that we look in the mum's head, and sadness is the one in charge, but she certainly doesn't come across as sad. She's calculated, and she's thoughtful, and she listens, and she's interested, because it's a developed emotion. It's a developed understanding. And I think that I'm not that I'm like completely like a child, though I do sometimes feel that way, but I think that I'm still in that developmental stage, with the joy part of my brain, which is kind of ran the ship for so long, and is suddenly being hit with life and responsibilities and everything, and it needs to listen to the other parts of the controlling panel, or the other emotional characters. And the battle is that like that, not the same way, the same idea as yours, but that there is like, everyone has their own little battle that happens that they learn from, and you have.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I like, one of mine is it's one of the things, like, I love information. So I like to read a lot. I like to watch a lot of things.
Oh, you're good
like
on this podcast.
I like to absorb a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
just about anything. And it's like, for me, what I would say about like sadness is I have a very strong tendency to just go down a negative path in terms of outlook on the broader things, right? I don't mean like this project isn't going well, we're fucked.
Yeah.
I don't take that into my professional life, but in my personal life, it's, I'll be reading something news and I just start sort of thinking, and it's a thing that I'm very like well trained at going, whatever, not in an avoidance way, but in a, processing way. There's so much pain in the world and so many horrible things, and, what's going to happen next, and the oceans are going to rise, and the pollution's going to choke everyone in China, and, they're herding people into camps, and they're burning, Yazidi minorities alive in the Middle East, and like you see that shit and you just go, what the fuck is like, what is there to feel good about? And then you see, that's why it's really great to have people like Bill and Melinda Gates around. Like he every year releases a big thing of stats of, it looks like things are bad, but what got better? And you look at the statistics that they have from the data that they collect, and you just go, wow.
Yeah, child mortality rates is gone down.
Dropping, AIDS rates dropping, depending on where you are. But, things like infant mortality is a huge one. Poverty is a huge one. Starvation is a huge one. All these things dropping quite quickly. The overall crime rate in the world hugely dropping. Again, depending on where you are, but it's sort of like, when people come out going, it's so unsafe because of the Sudanese in Melbourne or some shit like that, you go, okay, well, year-on-year crime has been like dropping in Australia for a long time. So it's not, you look at all that stuff and you go, let's remind ourselves that the information that comes to us has to be the worst thing that happens that day because it has to be notable, right? There's a great line in Peep Show when they're watching the news, and it's a bus crash and a person died and 50 people are injured and stuff, and this hippie chick goes, bad news, bad news, bad news. What about all the buses that got to where they had to go, safely? And Mark says, yes, the news should just be a complete dispassionate list of good things that happen throughout the day. That's a really good idea, except it would go forever. And that's the important thing, right, is you have to come back to that idea. And I think that if you are interested in, I think that's one of the reasons why I think I don't get along with very really perky people and happy all the time is like, I'm just interested in I'm interested in everything that's going on as best I can possibly get my hands on it and wrap my mind around it. And, there's a lot of bad shit in the world that needs to be fixed. And so
I don't know why we hang out. Not that I'm a perky, everything is great.
I need to bring the darkness to you.
Well, no, I think I have a certain level of realism when it comes to the world and how it is and stuff like that. But I also think that I'm certainly more inclined to be you trip over and be like, well, now I know where that thing is. So, well, now that I tripped over, now I know how to fall better. I'll spin it in a.
How I like to try and spin it is it is important to be aware, and that's enough. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, one of the things I really liked, I had a chat to someone ages ago. I was like, I'd love to do a superhero film where the superhero's capacity is that he can take the burden of emotion, whatever that emotion might be. And it's so he could absorb and it's what could happen? It's say maybe say a nuclear blast goes off and it's all the horrible, or a tsunami hits and it's all the people. Imagine if you had this superpower of being able to go, don't worry, all you people, 250,000 people who've died, all of your families, which is millions of people. I'll take all your sadness and I'll process it for you, and then you'll be relieved of it. It's how much does that weigh?
I was gonna say, because like I feel like you do that, and then it'd be like, and he killed himself,
And the person would be like crushing into the earth or like trying to like stand up or something like that. I'm like, worst movie ever. But such a fucker. I just love the imagery of it in my head. And I think of it that way. I just like to think of it as like, that doesn't exist. So you can't take it on board and process it as though it has the depth of meaning to you as it would to the people who are involved. It's not possible. I think it's important to be realistic about that. But there's just bad days. You know, you'll see a school shooting here, or you'll see. If I'm perfectly honest about that stuff, I've actually really gotten to the point of just, oh yeah, another one.
Which is sad.
Which is so fucked up. And then, but again, then what I do is I'll go out of my way to watch documentaries or read things where it's like the parents talking, and then you remind yourself that there is something real to be connected to about that. And so I think that it's just that thing of being aware is the thing I have to remind myself of. It's like, that's enough. You don't have to sort of take on the emotion of it. It's just important that you know that this is happening, because if you can't do anything else about it, at least if you don't forget these things, if you remember that these things happen to people and that information can keep moving forward, I think that that's really, really, really important. Like, and that's one of the things, you know, I do say, like, when people talk about stuff happening in the Middle East, I'm always like, I'll often bring up the Yazidis, who are a tiny ethnic minority, who have experienced things like getting shut in cages and burned alive by ISIS, and just horrendous, like beyond like medieval type crimes. And you just look at that and go, like, there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm not gonna. I won't forget that happened to you. Like, you might be all the way over there, and from your perspective, you know, no one cares, but
there's one person that does.
I don't mean it in that way, because that sort of makes it not narcissistic, but it's like that elevates your like an over.
I'm on a high horse.
Yeah, it's not like that. It's just that people shouldn't forget that happened, and so I try to process it in that sort of way. I try to process and whatever it might be, tiny little things, you know, crimes that the government commits, and you just go, I'm going to remember that. You know, for fucking 15 years down the line, when you say something or you ask people to vote for you on something, I'm going to fucking remember that you did that, because that's the important part.
Why the hell are we friends? Because I'm like, I'm going to remember that. What was that?
I just filed it. Yes, but it's like, I'm sure it's all this information that gets pushed out of my brain and just re-edited over all the time. But yeah, so I think that's the way that I deal with that sort of going down the sad path, is I try to go, no, just focus on it's enough to try to be aware about things, or to care in any way at all.
Yeah.
To care enough to want to know about it, I guess, because if you can't do anything about it. But obviously there's grades of it, right? So I guess that's the kind of thing. That's how I try to avoid my tendency to go down a path of negative thinking, which that's not sadness. It's more despair, or like something similar.
In early iterations of this film, like, you know, like script, they had many more characters, and some of them were like despair and like the more kind of finer emotions, and then they like culled them down.
Yeah,
to the you know, final.
I thought they might have done something like that, because you just look at it and you go, sadness is very broad in the film. Like, she does despair, she does, you know,
she plays a lot. She puts on a lot of hats,
and so does Joy and the others. So that's interesting, because it wouldn't be a good film, right? At some point, it can't be. Let's make it as perfectly accurate as possible. No, that's interesting, because I think that it would have been not a good film if they had 70 different emotions or something.
Yeah, it would have been more like a skit show. And it would have been boring.
Yeah.
It wouldn't allow that. And also, I think
specific too. Like, the character would have had to come out in response to specific, and then they would have gone back and you wouldn't have seen that character for another hour.
And it would have been boring characters too, because like
one note.
These characters, they learn from each other. Like, towards the end of the film, you can kind of see like how Joy develops.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, you know. And I also think it's more like, it's a lot of those emotions you don't really factor in when you're an early child. It is kind of like joy, happiness, sadness. You know, like, it's kind of the basics.
Yeah, I think. I mean, for me, like, I was a joy-driven child.
Okay.
Like, I was.
I was more anxious. I was more like a fear-driven child, I think. I don't know.
I was fearful of stuff, but I was really like a happy I was a very happy, naive, good versus evil mindset child, you know. And that's why, like, anything, the tiniest little thing, like a friend might do the tiniest thing, little white lie or something, I would just be utterly betrayed. Like, I would be so upset because it would be, I don't understand how you could do that. Or as you get older, it's sort of like maybe like someone you didn't expect who'd always been nice, like they'll go in on like a bit of light teasing or something like that. I'd be shattered by it because you're either my friend or you're not my friend. There's no spectrum of anything. Everything is black and white. And so as a kid, I was pretty happy because I just thought there was like good people and evil people and you could tell what was what.
And then comes Call of Duty 2, and you're playing the Germans versus the Nazis versus the Americans, and it seems everything's still black and white. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know that. Like when we play that game together, you're very much always the non-Nazi side, and I'm like, you know, at least I have consistent weaponry. And very well made weaponry, which is just
how you use it.
That's true.
Who won?
Well, I don't know. Well, no, I know who won. I think we can kind of like go through the other ones pretty quickly because they're also not really dived into in this film. But like, I mean, fear is one of the ones, which is I think an important one because that I think for both of us in some respect is kind of the idea of anxiety and the worry, paranoia.
Yeah, that's all folded into to fear in that film for sure. She's anxious when she goes to school. She's not really afraid, outwardly. She's excited to go, but a bit worried. And then she gets there and it's like she falls apart because of sadness. But yeah, Fear's well done. I mean, Fear's quite caricaturish in it, but they have a few sort of notes of like subtlety of anxiety and things like that.
Well, I also think that Fear, you don't really see that on the main line because I think there are probably a lot of people that it might be on the main line, but I would be surprised to hear that there's many people where like Fear is the front runner. It always is a co-pilot or someone on the kind of the edges that's kind of teasing their ideas in less the driving force because like Fear.
I guess the difference really is that like if you talking about it in the real world, like fear isn't just an emotion, it's also a very basic mechanism of the brain. So it's not just an emotion, it's
the lizard brain.
Yeah, if you think of it in those terms, like it's fight or flight. Fear is there for a reason, it's to keep you alive. So it's how you filter through a conscious and intellectual brain that emotion. So if you fear something, is it rational or is it irrational or whatever? If you have a tiger and there's like a big lake of water, if you put like a human mind or the problems of a human mind into a tiger, it's going to be like, oh, I'm really afraid of swimming. I don't know if I'm going to swim. A tiger doesn't see it that way. A tiger either sees something I can get through or something I can't get through. If I can't get through it, I fucking run or I fight. If I can get through it, I'll just go through it. So, that's sort of the thing about fear is that it's not just an emotion. It's also got that survival mechanism attached to it.
And I guess so does disgust and anger to their own respects. Because, anger is kind of a...
part of fight, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's part of like something's not going the way you want it to go. I was actually watching a really amazing video that was sent to me, and it was about anger, and it was talking about how like when you see someone who's really angry and you think of them as this kind of negative or like kind of like a downer kind of person, it's actually important to conceive of the idea that they might actually be the opposite. An angry person is often someone who's very hopeful that has been dissatisfied, and that so they might actually be on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Oh yeah,
it's actually like, yeah, everything's going great, and they only get angry often because it doesn't go like they thought it would, and so our opinions on that, it can actually be really.
It's about whether or not it's worth. There's so many things about anger. It's like whether or not it's worth expressing. Like, oh God, my housemate did something that annoyed me. Is it worth having an argument over? Or is it worth having... It's like, no, go away, calm down, talk to them calmly about it and ask them politely not to do something. There's no fucking point in getting...
But there's also some, there's power to it as well, especially when it comes to, strength or to be able to take on something that might be bigger than you think or that's actually, I just realized... Every single time anger does something out of his own will, not every time, but I think most of the times, he always in some way battles fear. He always hits fear out of the way,
Yeah.
lights fear on fire, like punches fear.
Because
Like,
fear is caution, and that's the thing, is that caution needs to overtake fear, because overtake anger, because anger is the majority of the time. Anger is seen in a very negative way. I have had to work hard to deal with anger. Like, I used to be able to get angry really easily and stuff like that, and now I start to, and then I've gotten really good at processing it and then making a decision.
well, that's going back on what I was saying about joy. I think quite a lot of it's one of the emotions that I've been very suppressive of is anger, because as a kid I was very angry. Well, I had a lot of angry tendencies, like, I mean, we all do, and it was not advantageous in the situation that I was in to be angry, and so I'd suppress that to a negative point, to a point where, like, it was an emotion that I wasn't allowing to happen, and what it was doing is it wasn't allowing. Having anger allows you to be who you are. It allows you to get what you want, or at least know what you want to get, so that without that emotion, you can't understand yourself.
The thing is, people look down on it as, most of the time people look at anger as like, you've lost control. Whereas I tend to say to people, like, it comes down to the context. There are times where you absolutely have the right to be as angry as you want. You know, if someone truly betrays you, obviously you can't hurt people.
No.
Or you shouldn't hurt people, is a better way to say it, because people do hurt each other. But if someone really betrays you, you have the right to be as fucking angry as you want, in my opinion. You can let rip. Like, that's just one of those times. And there's levels of anger, right? Like, I got angry when I went to Telstra the other day, and I was telling you about that. Like, when I was annoyed at this guy at Telstra, and he was telling me something that was, like, in violation of consumer law. And I got frustrated with him, and I just ended up saying, I was still calm at this point. And he started to get angry.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, okay, so don't tell me, like, illegal shit when I come in here as a customer asking you questions. Don't not tell me information, and instead tell me things that are not legal. You have legal responsibilities and contractual responsibilities. And he was like, well, I'm really sorry about that. I went, no worries, man. Next time I come in, just don't want to hear anything illegal. As I start walking out, he starts, like...
I love this story so much.
Turns to have a bit of a laugh with his colleague. Yeah. And I just turned around and I was like, what the fuck? Not shouting, not anything. Literally, like, this was my exact level. I went, what the fuck are you laughing at, man? Like, seriously. Dedicated, loyal customer, been with you for a while. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you laughing?
So good.
And it's that thing of, like, that's a completely justified use of anger and frustration. Like, that was an appalling way to treat someone who pays you a lot of money for a service.
The reason why you're working there is...
Exactly. You have a job because of millions of people like me.
Yeah.
So us all together, we are the people that give you a job. So as consumers, we provide you with an industry in which to work.
And yeah, sure, the consumer isn't always right, but that doesn't mean you're allowed to lie to them or to
No. I did not go in with they're always right edge. I don't have that. I worked in customer service for 8 years. I always walk in with that mentality. I walk in thinking, what right do I have to be treated what way, and how would I expect to be treated, and how would I treat the person in this circumstance? Immediately getting into the interaction, he started telling me stuff that was not just a load of nonsense, but was in violation of the contract that we together had signed. The definition of a contract is, between mutual parties. And I immediately knew what his tone. It was like, it was New Year's Day or the 2nd of January or something like that. I was like, it's your first day back at work and you don't fucking care. That's what's happening. I'll get upset with that.
Yeah.
With a tiny, tiny dose of anger. And that's the thing. It's like, there's some people will say that's ugly or embarrassing or something like that. But I did use the exact volume, and that was... because it's one of those moments where I always think very hard before I do anything. Maybe when I was younger, I'd turn around and when I was younger, I would probably get extremely angry internally and then not do anything. And then it would just be in me in a really ugly, unpleasant way. And now it's just like, all right, directed that out at that guy. All right, what are we doing for the rest of the day?
Yeah, that doesn't happen to me. I'm still very immature when it comes to my anger.
It's because I think that inherently anger is so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Is the problem. Anger is blinding. Anger makes you it can completely control you. And so I think that's the scary part of anger and why people have an unhealthy relationship with it. But I think that if you have to let it out every so often, when reasonable and at levels that are reasonable, a lot of customers would have fucking screamed at that guy. But I didn't. I just let him know that I knew what they were doing because that's what I wanted to do. It was going to make me feel better and hopefully make him feel a bit bad about being incredibly rude.
And if it doesn't, screw it. It made you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like I was right and I felt like it was a justified thing to do. So in that sort of situation, whereas if someone does something and it's an accident, you see people get really angry a lot if you're out of the shops and someone does something and it's a complete accident. What the fuck do you think you're doing? Blah, blah, blah. It's like,
come on, man.
I didn't see you there. So what
do you expect?
I'm genuinely sorry, but I didn't do it intentionally. So, that's the sort of times where when something happens, you need as much information as possible before getting angry, I suppose, is the thing. And that's the hardest part, is being able to pause the emotion long enough to collect the information to know whether or not anger is a justified response. And it's part of fight or flight, right? It's like your brain is trained to either make you run or fight. And that's what the problem is that you're going to anger is just, we'll punch fear out of the way and and off you go.
So let's talk about disgust. Now I can talk about this one because I didn't realize how much disgust I have in things until I compared my disgust for chewing noises and things on people's faces and like food and stuff on people's faces and things like that. I didn't realize how disgust actually affects me. And because I realize that a lot of people don't, they're like, yeah, I mean, it's gross that it's got something on their face, but it actually really nauseates me. And also disgust is like they describe it in the film. Disgust is there as it's another defense mechanism. You find something disgusting because you're afraid to eat it. It's trying to protect you in its own kind of way.
Oh, totally.
Or socially protect you. I think
my list of disgust is pretty long. But one of the problems is because of OCD, it gets a bit polluted. So I'll be disgusted by a lot of completely irrational things. And then I don't know, not disgusted by horse shit.
I'm not really disgusted by cockroaches. Yeah, right.
Vile. I can't handle cockroaches.
I'm freaked out about spiders, but don't get me wrong, I don't think cockroaches are oh, they're so cute. And I'll put
just crawl over me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. But they are they don't disgust until I squish them, and then that's what makes me feel really that's where I'm like, oh, because then there's the gooey stuff. And
that's disgusting.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? It's I'll have mild disgust at things, and then you have to handle it. It's Juno will vomit everywhere or something like that, and you're just well, got to deal with that immediately. But I don't know how parents do it. Fuck that.
I think that it just happens. I
think you get over it very quickly from what everyone has told me, but I just can't see myself doing that. I don't want to deal with other people's shit.
Literally.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I think that my disgust on people's food on people's faces, I always say that, and the first thing a parent will say is wow, you're gonna hate having kids, because that's the main thing that happens. It's anyway, I don't know.
Anything it comes down to certain textures, but for me it's banana and avocado are the two things that truly deeply disgust me, and cockroaches.
Maybe that's why we're friends, because I can't eat those, so we don't ever interact in those environments.
I'm your safety blanket. Don't worry, Pio, I won't ever order those things.
Thank you so much.
Unless it's a banana paddle pop or the little candy.
That's
bananas.
fine. I don't get the allergic reaction to that. So that's candy bananas. I don't know. But yeah,
It don't taste anything like banana. It's not even the taste.
No, it's the texture.
It's the texture, but the smell. It smells like a gas. It fills my throat and makes me
awesome.
Like mandarin smell.
Really? You don't like the mandarin smell?
Mandarin is a beautiful flavor, but the smell is fucking disgusting.
That's super.
It's foul.
Weird.
I remember we were driving back from somewhere. It was me, Georgia, and I think it was Ella in the car. And then Ella opened a mandarin, and then both of us at the same time was like, "Who's eating a mandarin?" And I was like, "Do you hate this?" She's like, "I fucking hate the smell of mandarins." And she was driving. It was her car, so it's
Get it out of the car.
Yeah, if you're the driver.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was a
yeah,
long drive. It was like an hour and a half drive.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, well, yep, I'm glad I'm on this side of that rule.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
But it's one of those weird things. Like, I think it's like coriander. People find it's disgusting. It's a thing like that. I don't think I'm smelling what other people are smelling. Like,
No, you
whatever
mustn't.
mandarin smells like to me is like
It's like a light
putrid.
citrus. That's what it smells like.
Yeah,
When
no,
I-
it fills my nostrils and throat, and it makes me feel ill. It makes me feel like the room has been all the oxygen's been sucked out.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Man, I got so many things I'm going to do to you. No, because that'd just make it worse. 'cause
mandarin farts.
Yeah, I'm going to only eat mandarins for 3 weeks and then just rip one off. Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like that's kind of like the characters, right? We dived into anger, disgust, fear, sadness, and joy. So let's talk about the scenery just
Yeah.
really quickly. Try to kind of blitz through that. Because you talked about those islands.
Yeah.
You love them. I think I love that they're powered by the core.
Yeah, the core memories.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Well, it's about establishing the things that make you yourself, or whether it be principles or, passions or whatever they might be. It's these things that had a moment in your life set things in your personality that are meaningful to you for either a long time or for some time or,
enough to create an island.
Yeah, like maybe eventually her hockey island does collapse and it becomes basketball island or lacrosse island. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So it's the thing, but I think it's that thing of accepting that those islands can be damaged and put back and
reborn.
But they could also just never come back.
That's right.
Maybe
Fall
it's
into the
scary or
abyss.
maybe it's not. Don't do drugs.
Yeah, I love how they collapse. There's a lot of moments in the film where like she does something that's not like, it's not like when she hangs up on her mum and then suddenly there's a crack
Yeah,
in
through
the family island, and it's just like, oh, there's a perfect, like the way they edited that, the way they cut that together, and the sound effect and how that all connects. It's such a beautiful.
It's because it's the
moment.
first time it ever happens in her life. She's probably never hit the hang up button on her mum before because the dynamic of her relationship with her parents is fundamentally changing.
Yeah, that's right.
And
it's very secure, like beforehand, like.
And it will never be the same again. So they might be stronger afterwards, but they're going to have to go through negative things in order to reach a more advanced version of that same island.
Yeah, they're going to have to rebuild it a bit.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own, versions of all these islands that are stronger and weaker, and that, that, like, and I guess you could always say that those kind of core ideas and the way that they kind of power these islands, they also, especially once you get older, like you can only power a certain amount of things, right? You can only like I feel like that inherently, you, especially if you have a family and like you have to give so much to that.
There's only so much you can care about.
That's right. And that's why actually one of the fundamental things that I always think about, like when, I used to think, I want to think about all of the life's problems and where I can invest any of my kind of research and my interests. And I'm like, no, pick your fight. Like, doesn't mean you should ignore any other major concept, but, like, if it's about sexuality and health, if it's about feminism, it's about, the kind of climate change, that's probably, and astrophysics is probably like the things that I'm super interested in, and that I will fight for those causes, but I don't think everything else is completely bollocks. I just don't have the energy to be able to disperse that.
Yeah, I think people have an idea of some people see people out there who have the capacity to do a lot of things all the time, and some people just aren't that way. They care a very great deal about a few things, or maybe those people care not as much about more things, or maybe they do care as much as the people who have a few things about them. But I think it just comes down to who you are as a person and not being, judgmental of how other people choose to sort of live their life. Unless, not be judgmental. I think judgmental is such a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's just something that we do by accident the vast majority of the time.
I think judgmental is something that you hold back on. Like you inherently putting people in boxes and doing that.
I think people judge constantly.
Oh yeah.
I know I do. And then I'll stop and think about my judgment and then weigh in on it.
Yeah, that's
decide what I'm thinking about. Because sometimes you look at someone and maybe they only have like one interest in their life or something like that, and you go, I think that person's like
lacking.
or maybe they're just living in ignorance, or they're doing this or they're doing that. And you might feel judgmental about that, and you might be compelled to say, hey, you should try this, But
then you realize that one thing is what their life is, and they love it, and it's exactly what they need. Exactly.
And maybe they will like the other thing and try that, and then they'll grow, and that's often what they do. But, you just, So I guess I don't, judgment can be a very negative thing, but I think that the actual moment that it happens the vast majority of the time is very accidental. It just happens. I don't know.
What do you think about the memory banks? I thought that was brilliant. I love, firstly, that they kind of look like a brain, and they also are so unorganized and messy, and the orbs that are they slowly fade, and those dudes that suck them out, and just kind of I love how careless they are about getting rid of memories. Yeah, of course, the
memories are extremely unreliable. Because the problem is that the way that a memory essentially plays out is in an extremely similar way to a dream. So what happens is your memory goes into your head, and then the way that it plays back is using a very similar mechanism to dreams. So your brain is going to fuck it up.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because it's a simulation. It's not, memories aren't real. They're a rough approximation of what happened. So it's really interesting. As you know, I watch and listen to just endless crime stuff, and it's becoming more and more popular to acknowledge the fact that eyewitnesses are basically the worst evidence in existence.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone needs cameras. Which reminds me of that amazing joke in this, which is she bumps into the box of facts and opinions.
And they get confused. She's like, oh no, these facts and opinions are all mixed together. Don't worry about it. It happens all the time.
Yeah, I think that's another, there's so many little jokes like that kind
of... truisms, Even
the train of thought. The thought train.
The train of thought, one of my favorites was the piano thing. It's she's not using it. The grade 6 piano, she's not using any of this. Just get rid of everything except for... It was chopsticks and something else. The two things that people always sit down to play at their piano that they don't forget.
Yeah.
And the jingle from the TV ad where they're just every now and again, we just like to set it back up. It's hilarious. Should we do it right now? Yeah, let's do it.
And it's because that's kind of how it feels like when you get a jingle stuck in your head.
Yeah,
it just feels like some jerk face is sent. It was that was the perfect way to describe it. And I especially love those those characters that are such the worker bees of your brain. I feel like they personify, I guess what they would be is they're like the neurons or your brain or whatever. They're that's how they behave, and they're just the worker bees. They just do the job.
Yeah.
And they're also callous, and for them it's just we've got a billion thoughts to get through, so I'm just gonna zap all these up.
I think it's why we still haven't successfully mapped. The brain is so miraculous and so unbelievably incredible. The fact that we're able to speak to each other using words and understand exactly what each other... I mean, that's just fucking mind-boggling.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that it's just one of those things of the chaos that happens in a brain due to the nature of, your brain is like a world, and there's a lot of chaos in the world. Why? Because it's so fucking big and complicated. And if you solve one problem, it creates a million other problems.
Oh, yeah.
There's all these different sort of other things. And I think that, that stuff really is reflecting it's they put all these little sort of true things about being a person, having a mind. They put those things into the film, and it's funny. You connect with it because you go, ha, that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I think they represent that stuff really well. But and they're really, really good at all that kind of stuff. And anyway, whether it be Toy Story and they make jokes about toys or, whatever it might be, they're really good at tapping into broad stroke humor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I'd normally mean as an insult. But it's truly the opposite with Pixar. They manage to perfectly encapsulate concepts that are very, very, very funny about being a person or a toy or an animal or whatever.
What about, sorry, this is on that topic. What was it called? It was called not DreamWorks Productions.
Oh, yeah, the Dream Production place.
Yeah, which is another brilliantly conceptualized concept. And there's something really beautiful.
Reality filter.
Yeah. There's something that's really cool about. So I was thinking about once again, this is going to the behind the scenes, and we're talking about how like Pixar have this way of doing things, which is just like there's so many layers and so much depth to it. And there was it was just an interview with one of the animators, and she said that she gets really nervous because at Pixar they don't wait for the final draft before they see your work.
Yeah.
They see it at whatever stage, and you've just got to be okay with that and be ready for criticism. And which is, like the kind of they describe it as like kind of this family mentality that you always see your other family members, the flaws and the benefits of everything, and you're always trying to bump them and help them up. And the fact that regardless of how someone feels, they had to express and show themselves at their kind of worst, so that it kind of allows them to generate more deeper concepts. And it can just be like the way a particular background character looks, or an idea of a story that whatever it is, it just feels like it's gone through so many filters before it even gets out into like even the draft stage, which is just, I think, what creates such amazing work. And to be honest, they probably have a lot of dollars and a lot of time. Like that's what, like the same with Naughty Dog, like they make such good quality work, but they have like not an unlimited budget, but may as well, right?
Yeah, they're not Rockstar.
They're not Rockstar, that's right. Those guys could, but then again, if they also spend that budget so much on their work as well. Like they make the most expensive games in the world, don't they?
Who, Rockstar?
Yeah, they must, right? They've got to be the 500 million or like 1 billion.
GTA 5 cost over $500 million.
Anyway, so Pixar are freaking awesome. Now, we could always talk about the abstract place, which I think was just a gag. It's just a cool gag. Imagination Land was amazing, because I love how that kind of like it's just an awesome concept. But the one other concept that's really beautiful is the memory bank. Is it called? No, memory bank. It's where you lose your memories. Where they
the pit or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that was, I thought, really well represented. I was watching, once again, behind the scenes and them talking about it, but it's just like the sap of color, like the colors taken out of all of it, the way that things kind of like dissipate in that kind of way that reminds of the dream. That's probably one of the main moments which made me really teary, because I just like, that's such a sweet and beautiful moment that happens where, I keep forgetting his name.
Boing boing?
Boing boing. Well, how do I forget that name? Lets himself go in that,
Yeah.
And there's something that's also really, it's like one of the things I swear I probably had an imaginary friend when I was a kid, but I just don't remember it.
I definitely did not have one.
Okay. Well,
I always see that in things like films. It's quite a trope, but I never ever had an imaginary friend.
You loner.
No, I personified toys.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. No, it's not. You're not actually like it's not. It's everyone, I guess, has a different experience. But I think I'm pretty sure I had some kind of one, but I couldn't tell you at all what it was.
Yeah, it's because you don't give a shit and you fade away like boing boing.
That's exactly right. It's in my. Well, actually, there's so much in that pit. I think the my little worker bees are working overtime.
I feel you in the pit. I'm tired.
Yeah, you are. But anyways, I think that's about it. Anyway, wrapping it up. This was an amazing film. I really, really loved it. I love where it goes. Like, it's such a, like, the storytelling of it, and like, even just listening to the conversation, I could talk about for hours about every kind of individual moment. We could do like a watch the movie, pause it, and then talk about a scene. Like, it's just one of those films to me.
If you do that, that will happen with Star Wars. And you have to do it 9 times.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
I feel like what I would say about it is it's an astonishingly good movie. It's not just a great animation.
Yeah. Even if you took the class out of itself, it's just an amazing film. What are you showing me? I can't read it from here. It's an for the people at home. It says on the cover, it's an astonishingly good movie, not just a great animation.
Sydney Morning Herald.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
I believe that. That's
a great
when you
film.
said that, I was like, it's not just. It is actually just an amazing movie.
That betrays like a real problem in like audience and critic universe. If it's a comedy, it can't be a great film. If it's an animation, it can't be a great film. It can't be taken seriously. Number of times I hear people say they can't, like, I don't watch Rick and Morty. It's a cartoon. Cartoons are stupid.
Yeah.
I watch South Park. It's a cartoon. Cartoons are stupid. It's like, you know that concepts are different from method of execution, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I get that with comic books. You know, like comic books, they're just for kids.
They're for children, yeah.
Yeah, video games are for kids.
They're for children as well,
So that's why they have an R18 rating.
All right.
Yeah, dude, thank you so much. Episode 1, Season 3. That's it.
The Phantom something or
The Phantom Chili
the Phantom Menace
of podcasts.
Woo!
Woo! We did it. Done. Now you can finally blow your nose properly and sleep.
Right.
Bye. So that's the podcast for today. Thank you so much. First episode of Season 3. Stay tuned as there are going to be more episodes every 2 weeks. To keep up to date, don't forget to subscribe using Podbean or just whatever app that that you have lying around. It can also be found on iTunes and whatnot. I want to give a special shout out to Josh Lundberg coming back for another season, having a long chat with me, and more to come from him. So thank you so much. And finally, this podcast was produced by me, Piotr Wasilewski, and the music was sourced from the Filmstro website. Till next time, thanks for listening.